Some friends from Taos called me up and they said, we have all these kids that are robbing everybody. Fighting, stabbing, dealing, and stuff like that. And I said, I've had a lot of failures working with drug addicts and alcoholics because my hope is too high. So I'm always on the edge and I try to grab them, but it just doesn't work because when you're ever on the edge, you encounter forces that are very strong. Some are pulling you back, some are pulling you forward. And the thing where you encounter your integrity and your balance is when you balance. I mean, this whole thing that it's okay to pop shot it, to do drive-bys with your integrity. It's okay to do the drive-bys, like to have integrity tonight, but not tomorrow morning when you scream at somebody, right? And it's okay to have your equanimity of soul and mind tomorrow afternoon, but not tomorrow night. You know what I'm saying? And what I'm after is to try to train people to have it all the time, even if it's little tiny small ones. Not big integrity, but little tiny snowflakes. Not the snowstorm. None of that. So I said, they said, well, can you do something? And I said, well, we'll see. Bring them up to this ranch we have way up there somewhere, up there by Watrous. So when they brought all the kids up to the Watrous ranch, I had no idea what I was going to say to them. But some kid was standing there with us, and he said, how come that river over there is dead? What a good, talk about now. The kid said, well, how come that river's dead? And I turned around, I never realized that part of the Pecos was dead. And I said, well, I don't know. I said, let me ask Brian. So I asked Brian. I said, Brian Miller. I said, what? And he says, oh, it's because when people bought this, they were from Texas, oil people, whatever, and they wanted to move the river closer to the back of their cabin, so they kind of bulldozed it out. You know, and the kid that asked the question felt very sad about that. He was like, and this is the same kid that would rob me in a second, right? If I met him when he was high, because when you get high, the drug leads you. You don't lead the drug. So it's not really you that's robbing me. It's the drug wearing your face. It's wearing your clothes and your body at the moment. So that night in the big cabin, we were all talking about keeping journals. And we were talking with the kids and stuff like that, and it struck me. Wow. I said, how do I put this in a way that empowers the kids to go out and work and to write? Because I'm really tired of my perspective. I'll just stand back from it. But how do I put this in a way where the kids see it, where they step up to it as healers? Just because the kid's 17 years old, happens to be mestizaje chicano indio, happens to be a dropout and on heroin and meth, doesn't mean he can't go out and be a healer. Those are the qualifications for a healer. I never saw it in the Webster Dictionary. They come in all colors and all sizes, and everybody's in some way, right, can teach something, right? So as me and the kids were talking in the cabin that night, I realized that they were all in some weird way feeling the Pecos River was their soul. That somebody had gone into them a long time ago and moved it. And that part of their soul, this part was healthy, that part was healthy, but this part was dead. It was the dead zone. It was where the stepfather came in and abused this girl. It was where the father came in and slapped the hell out of this kid in bed one night. It was where some really horrible, traumatic event occurred where the dead zone was created, right? So I told the kids, moving the river back home. I said, how about we do this? How about we move the river back to where it belonged? The channel that was its nurturing channel that Mother Earth put it in. And how about if we do that at the same time, we do it with yourselves? How about we do that? Move your river back home. And they were like, what kind of smoke you got, Baca? Doesn't that make sense metaphorically to you? And the kids were all little high school kids. They were like, yeah, that does make sense, dude. That does make sense. Somebody went in there and they moved that river in me, man. And I want to move that river back because I want to start the greening process again, right? So the whole 2 weeks that we were up there, they were journaling about moving the river back home. Now, it's gonna blow you away tonight when you see the documentary, because even though I've seen it, it's only 20 minutes, but I've seen it at least 50 times, and it was the very first one we did. But it never fails to just blow me away, because of what these kids have done, what they did during that workshop is unbelievable. and moving the river back home. We didn't really mean to go there. The kids took us there. And I recruited a couple of actresses from Los Angeles. You'll recognize one of them. She's pretty famous. I recruited an old gangster who is a multi-millionaire spiritualist in D.C. now. Sounds like a politician. But you'll see him. He's an old guy he looks like an old pachuco. You know what a pachuco is? A lot of class. Looks like an old. He looks like a white-skinned jazz. You'll see some street kids, hardcore ex-street kids that have done some horribly violent things to people who cross the road and now practice peace. You'll notice them in the documentary. They're all tattooed up. One of them's got a rope around his neck. His father, at the age of 9, tattooed a rope around his neck and said, "Know that you are condemned as a hang. Know that you have no chance in life. That you were born as a hang baby and you will die as a hangman." And that was that. And I said to him, when he was working with me, he no longer works with me. I let him go. I mean, I don't have time for you to go. Even men have umbilical cords. But I said to him, "Let's have a ritual where we cut the rope." And he's like, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, no, I'm not going to go in there and cut your skin or anything." I said, "Let's just have a symbolic ritual where we cut the rope. Let's do a little bit of poetry readings together. Let's travel together. And let's just liberate you from the hangman's platform. How about we do that?" And it was rough, because when it came time to say goodbye to him, he cried. He wanted to fight me, because it was his dad saying, you know. And I said, "There's no need to fight me," or nothing like that. And over a couple of years now, he's okay. You know, he's fine. He loves me. He wants to come back, but I told him, "No, you got to keep going on that road. You got to be Dharma on the edge." So I hope that you all understand what I meant by breaking bread with the darkness, because it's a good metaphor to keep with you, I think. Yeah?
Yeah.
I love that metaphor. Roshi has a wonderful book called Fruitful Darkness. Yeah.
Fruitful Darkness?
Which was a very transformative and initiatory book for me to read while I was in prison. That's when I first contacted Roshi after reading her book, and we began some conversations. Not too long ago, I was at a meeting in Boulder with some it's a gathering place, and they have lunches organized around various themes. And so they invited a bunch of interesting people, and everybody was going to talk about their work a little bit and then have a dialogue. So I talked a little bit about street retreats, being out on the streets with, you know, street folks and homeless folks, and being out there with no money and being in that world. And I talked about bearing witness retreats, bearing witness at places like Auschwitz and Rwanda. And 3 or 4 of the people at the table had a really hard time with that. They said, "Why would you want to go near that darkness? You know, you're just encouraging that kind of darkness in yourself and in others." I said, "Well, it's not exactly my experience." And then they went into this whole thing. They have this whole, there's a thing called positive psychology, which is becoming very popular. It surfaces again and again in various names in our culture, and there's a lot of good things about it. But it's the idea that you don't really need to go through the darkness. And maybe some people don't. Maybe some people can just go right into a more sort of transcendent, positive path. But I found it very interesting around that resistance to touch that darkness. And for me, you know, and maybe, you know, there's just people in the world like myself that found themselves in that dead zone when I was about 5 or 6 years old. And there's other people that don't need to do that. But at least in my experience, sooner or later we have to kind of touch that. And if we can find that way, like Jimmy's saying, to break bread with the darkness, to touch it and then leave it there. But to really honor it, because for me it's part of our life. You know, our life is not just this transcendental light thing, it's the whole thing. It's the integration of the light and the dark that takes us to a greater light, in a sense. The real magic and luminosity of nowness has to include the whole thing. Because if there's anything we're not including, then we're spending all our energy building up that wall to protect that, keep it out. And we're bound to be somewhere in our consciousness living in fear that wall's going to come down. So that practice of breaking bread with the darkness is a wonderful, not only metaphor, but I would imagine a wonderful regular practice and ritual to keep that level of integration, to not let oneself fall into some kind of artifice that unconsciously you're now having to protect from the darkness.